Have you ever wondered what happens when someone who's used to power, respect, and wealth is treated like they don't belong? What if the person denying them that respect holds a position of authority, assuming they can get away with it? On a crisp afternoon, in a well-established bank with walls that gleamed of status and prestige, a simple yet life-altering mistake was about to unfold. It would start with an encounter that seemed like any other. But what if the person you were looking down on was a millionaire? What if the consequences of underestimating them were far greater than anyone could have anticipated? Stay with me. What happens next will make you rethink what it means to truly know who you're dealing with. The story begins inside Crestview National Bank, where the people who walk through its doors often come with more than just money. They come with influence. But for one woman, this afternoon would be unlike any other she had ever faced. The grand lobby of Crestview National Bank was a sight to behold, an elegant fortress of wealth and sophistication, marble floors stretched beneath towering crystal chandeliers that glittered like stars suspended from the high ceiling. The air was thick with the subtle scent of polished wood, fresh flowers, and money, a scent that permeated every inch of this imposing space. It wasn't just a bank, it was a symbol, a fortress of financial power where the elite came to conduct business, where status wasn't just recognized, it was expected. Behind the counters, the tellers worked with an almost robotic precision, their every movement sharp, measured. They wore smiles that were polite but cold, reserved for only those in the highest echelons of society. The unspoken rule here was simple. The wealthy and powerful received the best service, the best treatment. And if you didn't fit the mold, well, you were just another face, another number in the sea of clients that came and went unnoticed. On this particular afternoon, however, there was a shift in the usual rhythm. A new figure entered the grand lobby, one who was different, unassuming yet undeniable. She didn't look like the typical client who passed through Crestview's doors. No expensive designer suits, no entourage of assistants or bodyguards, just a woman dressed in a simple black dress, flats, and carrying a sleek leather handbag. Her name was Danielle Carter, and to an outsider she looked like just another ordinary person. But beneath that quiet exterior was a mind as sharp as any CEO, and a life far more complicated than anyone in that lobby could have imagined. Danielle was about to find herself at the center of a situation that would change everything. As she walked into the bank, the usual hum of activity seemed to pause, conversations tapered off, and a few heads turned, some lingering with curiosity, others barely noticing her presence. But Danielle, calm and composed, moved with a quiet confidence that only those who've weathered life's storms can possess. Yet there was something in the air, an invisible weight, a tension that no one could quite name, but that seemed to settle with her arrival. Behind the glass walls of the bank's management office sat Susan Harding, the bank manager. Known for her meticulous attention to detail and her reputation as someone who didn't tolerate mistakes, Susan was the epitome of professionalism. In her tailored grey suit, she had the air of someone who had seen it all, except for one thing. She had no idea who Danielle Carter truly was, and that, as it turned out, was her biggest mistake. Then, into this world of polish and pretense, stepped Danielle Carter. She entered the lobby with the quiet confidence that only comes from knowing your worth, yet carrying it without need for proclamation. A tall, elegant woman in her late 30s, Danielle exuded a calm poise that commanded attention without effort. Her black dress, simple yet undeniably sophisticated, clung to her figure with graceful precision. The flats she wore were unremarkable to some, but for those who noticed, they whispered of a subtle, effortless chic, an unspoken choice that spoke volumes. Her natural hair, neatly styled into a smooth coil, framed her face with a quiet elegance. It was the sort of beauty that wasn't flashy, but held a quiet power, the kind that comes from someone who has spent years cultivating an aura of grace and dignity. There was nothing out of place about Danielle, and yet Something about her arrival shifted the energy in the room. A subtle tension rose in the air, almost imperceptible yet unmistakable. As she walked deeper into the bank, the once harmonious hum of quiet conversations and polite interactions seemed to stutter, if only for a moment. Eyes subtly shifted in her direction, some lingering longer than others, as though her very presence had altered the carefully curated rhythm of the place. She didn't need to draw attention, she simply commanded it. To those watching, it was clear. This was no ordinary customer. And then, as if to punctuate this change, Danielle approached the counter. She'd been here before, many times in fact, but today there was something different. Today, things would not go as smoothly as they had in the past. As Danielle made her way across the marble floors, the once seamless flow of the bank's atmosphere stilled, like a needle scratching across a record. The soft hum of conversation faltered, replaced by an uncomfortable silence that rippled through the room. Eyes darted toward her, some glancing away quickly, while others watched with a hint of curiosity, or perhaps judgment. Whispers began to swirl, low and subtle, just loud enough for her to hear. The staff, accustomed to the quiet, composed ambience, suddenly seemed out of step, as though they didn't quite know what to make of her. Danielle noticed it immediately. The way a few of the tellers stiffened at her approach, the quick murmur between two women near the far counter. Her presence had disrupted something in the room, but it was more than just the way she looked. There was something else, something unspoken, hanging in the air. At the far end of the room, hidden behind a set of glass walls, sat Susan Harding. The bank manager watched Danielle from her office with a piercing gaze, her sharp eyes scanning every detail. Her perfectly tailored grey suit screamed authority, the crisp lines and polished exterior giving off an air of professionalism. To most, Susan would seem every bit the epitome of competence, her poised demeanour and years of experience a reflection of her role. But Danielle could sense something else. Beneath that perfect exterior, there was something colder, something more calculating in Susan's eyes. It was as though Danielle's very presence unsettled her, like a ripple in a glass of still water. It wasn't just the way Susan watched her, it was the way she lingered, sizing her up in a way that felt less like an evaluation of a client and more like the scrutiny of someone trying to confirm an assumption. What Susan didn't know, what she failed to see in Danielle's calm exterior, was that Danielle was far more than just another client. She wasn't someone who walked into banks to simply make deposits or request a loan. No, Danielle Carter was a name that could make or break a bank's reputation, and Susan Harding was about to find out just how costly an assumption could be. As Danielle approached the counter, the stage was set. What would have been an ordinary transaction, something simple, would soon become a moment of reckoning for them both. As Danielle approached the counter, every step seemed to echo in the hushed silence of the lobby. The staff fell away as though instinctively creating space between her and themselves. It was as if, without anyone saying a word, they all understood that something was about to unfold. Susan Harding watched intently from her glass-walled office. The high-pitched click of her pen against the desk was the only sound in the otherwise still air. Susan looked up just as Danielle reached the counter. The instant their eyes met, the air between them seemed thick with an invisible tension. Susan's smile was meant to be warm, a welcoming gesture for any client, but today it felt forced, almost patronizing. She flashed it nonetheless, adjusting her glasses slightly as she straightened her posture. Danielle, unfazed, returned a quiet, steady gaze. "How may I assist you today, Miss Carter? Danielle Carter. I'm here to discuss some banking services." As Susan's eyes lingered a moment too long on Danielle's appearance, the simplicity of her dress, her shoes, her presence, there was a hesitation. It was fleeting but undeniable. Something was off, and Susan couldn't quite put her finger on it. The hesitation grew when Danielle casually mentioned her reason for being there. She was different from the usual clientele, that much was obvious, but there was something else too, something Susan couldn't ignore. Why is she here? She doesn't fit the usual profile of our clients. Is she even qualified for the level of service we offer? Unbeknownst to Susan, her assumptions about Danielle were about to be shattered, and her carefully constructed world of privilege would soon begin to unravel. I'd like to discuss setting up a new account. I'm afraid you'll need to make an appointment, Miss Carter. We only provide premium services to clients with more established financial portfolios. Susan, oblivious to the storm she was about to ignite, watched Danielle closely. She was already categorizing her. Someone who didn't quite fit in. Someone who could be dismissed with the wave of a hand. But Danielle Carter wasn't the type to be dismissed. Not by anyone, and certainly not by someone like Susan Harding. Despite the calm exterior Danielle maintained, Susan couldn't mask the subtle shift in her posture as she processed the request. There was something in the way Danielle held herself, in the way she spoke with such quiet confidence, that made Susan hesitate, if only for a moment. But that hesitation quickly turned into judgment, something far more ingrained and harder to shake. Susan's smile, already thin and strained, faltered before returning with calculated precision. Her voice, though polite, carried an undercurrent of something far less professional. I'm afraid we don't offer the same services to everyone, Miss Carter. You'll need to come back when we have a more suitable time for you. Danielle stood perfectly still, her expression unwavering. The air between them was thick with unspoken tension, but she didn't flinch. Instead, a restrained smile played at the corners of her lips, a quiet, knowing smile that spoke volumes. I'm not sure you understand, but I think it's you who will need to reconsider your policies. If that's all, Miss Carter. Danielle didn't move, didn't flinch. The bank, once pristine in its illusion of power, now felt small, fragile even, as the words hung heavy in the air between them. A quiet storm brewed, but Susan didn't see it. Not yet. With a final glance at Susan, Danielle turned and made her way toward the door. The sound of her footsteps, once so confident, now felt like the ticking of a clock in the silence of the lobby. The bank manager's eyes followed her, but Susan's mind was already elsewhere, focused on the small, insignificant moments that defined her control, unaware of the storm that was beginning to build just outside the glass doors. Danielle exited the bank, her heels clicking against the polished marble floors, each step measured and deliberate. To the casual observer, she appeared composed, unruffled by the encounter that had just transpired. But beneath that serene exterior, her mind was a whirlwind of thoughts and emotions. She had walked into Crestview National Bank with the intention of conducting legitimate business, armed with the necessary documentation and the means to do so. Yet she had been met with thinly veiled prejudice, judged not by her credentials or her financial standing, but by superficial assessments of her appearance. What Susan Harding failed to grasp was that Danielle Carter was not someone to be dismissed lightly. She was a force to be reckoned with, possessing both the resources and the resolve to challenge such injustices. The bank manager's condescension had ignited a quiet fury within Danielle, a determination to expose the underlying biases that tainted institutions like Crestview National. As she stepped out into the crisp afternoon air, Danielle's path forward became clear. She would not let this slight go unanswered. The world would soon see the cracks beneath the polished veneer of establishments that prided themselves on exclusivity, and Susan Harding would come to understand the profound mistake she had made in underestimating Danielle Carter. Upon leaving Crestview National Bank, Danielle Carter wasted no time. She returned to her office, a sleek space reflecting her success and influence. Settling into her chair, she reached for her phone, her mind already formulating a plan to address the blatant discrimination she had just experienced. Her first call was to her attorney, a formidable figure known for handling high-profile cases of corporate misconduct. She detailed the encounter with Susan Harding, emphasizing the dismissive and prejudiced treatment she had received. Her attorney listened intently, recognizing the gravity of the situation and the potential legal implications for the bank. Next, Danielle contacted several media outlets with whom she had established relationships over the years. She recounted her experience, highlighting the systemic issues within financial institutions that allowed such discriminatory practices to persist. The journalists, sensing a compelling story that touched on broader societal issues, were eager to investigate further. By the time Danielle left her office that evening, the wheels were already in motion. News outlets had begun reaching out to Crestview National Bank for comments, and the story was gaining traction on social media. The narrative was clear. A successful black woman had been unjustly turned away by a prestigious bank, shining a light on the pervasive issue of racial discrimination in the financial sector. Meanwhile, in her office, Susan Harding remained oblivious to the storm brewing outside her glass walls. She went about her evening routine, reviewing documents and preparing for the next day's meetings. It wasn't until she glanced at her tablet, intending to catch up on the day's news, that she saw the headline, "Local Bank Faces Lawsuit After Alleged Discriminatory Behavior Toward Millionaire Client." Her heart skipped a beat as she read further, realizing that the article detailed the very encounter she had dismissed earlier that day. The weight of her actions began to sink in as she contemplated the potential repercussions for both herself and the institution she represented. Unbeknownst to Susan, this was only the beginning. Danielle's actions had set off a chain reaction that would force Crestview National Bank to confront its practices and face public scrutiny like never before. The backlash against Crestview National Bank was swift and unrelenting. Within hours of Danielle Carter's story breaking, social media platforms ignited with outrage. Hashtags like Tambu's boycott Crestview Bank and racist banking began trending, amplifying the public's fury. Long-standing clients, disillusioned by the revelations, started withdrawing their accounts, unwilling to associate with an institution now tainted by scandal. The bank's phone lines were inundated with complaints, each call a testament to the growing discontent. In her office, Susan Harding watched helplessly as her professional life unraveled. The bank's board, bowing to the mounting pressure, issued a public apology and announced her immediate suspension pending a thorough investigation. The career she had meticulously built over decades was now collapsing, a casualty of her own prejudiced actions. The incident at Crestview National Bank serves as a stark reminder of the profound consequences that can arise from discriminatory practices within financial institutions. Such actions not only damage individual careers, but also erode public trust, leading to significant reputational and financial repercussions. Danielle Carter was not merely a client seeking banking services. She became a catalyst for profound change. A single act of discrimination, rooted in unfounded prejudice, did more than just wound an individual. It set in motion the unraveling of an institution's carefully curated reputation. Crestview National Bank's failure to uphold principles of equality and respect led to a public outcry, financial repercussions, and a tarnished legacy. This incident serves as a stark reminder that discrimination doesn't just harm those directly targeted. It inflicts lasting damage on businesses themselves. Beyond the immediate legal and financial consequences, discriminatory practices erode public trust, diminish employee morale, and can lead to widespread reputational harm. In today's interconnected world, news of such actions spreads rapidly, and companies find themselves under intense scrutiny from consumers and stakeholders alike. The cost of discrimination is steep, often resulting in lost revenue, decreased customer loyalty, and challenges in attracting and retaining top talent. In essence, the true price of prejudice is the very viability of the business. Reflecting on Danielle's experience prompts us to consider our own responses to injustice. If you were in Danielle's shoes, facing such blatant discrimination, How would you have reacted? Would you have taken a stand or walked away in silence? We invite you to share your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. Your insights can foster meaningful dialogue and contribute to a more inclusive and equitable society. If this story resonated with you, don't forget to hit the like button and share it with your friends. For more captivating tales that keep you on the edge of your seat, subscribe to our channel and click the bell icon so you never miss an update. We'd love to hear your thoughts on Danielle's experience. What would you have done in her situation? Share your perspective in the comments below.